Good evening and welcome to another episode of Rich Politics. But before we get into tonight's broadcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you to all of our current subscribers. We are growing and I'm really thankful for all of you that have taken the time to subscribe. Please share the videos and get others to subscribe as well to this non-politically correct Welshman having a rant about all things politics here on Wednesday nights and Friday nights. Well, what a week it has been. There's been ructions here in Wales because Boris Johnson made a statement last night calling devolution a disaster and the biggest mistake Tony Blair has ever made. In fact, Hugh Edwards reported it quite well last night on the BBC. Check this out.
Earlier this evening, the Prime Minister reportedly told a group of MPs that devolution had been a disaster north of the border and that the policy had been Tony Blair's government's biggest mistake.
Well, as you can imagine, that caused a Twitter storm last night and across social media because the Welsh Nationalists, or separatists as Boris called them, went absolutely bonkers. Adam Price came out condemning it, so did Nicola Sturgeon, and all of those who really want to break up the United Kingdom and our union. They went absolutely mental. It was funny to watch because the truth is what they want to do is divide us. We are one United Kingdom. When I tell people, you know, I'm Welsh and British, they call me a traitor. They call me a flag shagger for England, that is, a bootlicker and other things as well. But the reality is I'm a Welshman that believes in the United Kingdom, and there's lots of us because polls have shown recently here in Wales that the Boris Welsh Assembly party, a party that I'm with, actually has been polling just as high as Welsh independence. Back in June, a poll was conducted. 25% would vote for independence, but also 25% would vote to abolish the Welsh Assembly, to scrap devolution altogether. In fact, an interesting article I read this week by the journalist Martin Shipton for the Western Mail, I believe it was, who stated that 2/3 of Conservative voters said they would support abolishing or ending devolution here in Wales. With just over 5 months to go before the elections here in May, it seems as if parties are ramping up their campaigns. The Welsh indie lot are really pushing their narrative, getting loads of headlines from Welsh media, which they normally do because they got them in their pockets. Things like, you know, Wales Online's a perfect example. I've gone through their articles over the last 3 months and I've noticed consistently and consecutively they've been reporting about Welsh independence, promoting things such as Yes Cymru, were a movement for Welsh independence here in Wales, and many other of those parties as well, giving airtime to people like Adam Price, leader of Plaid Cymru, and of course dissing the idea that abolition is any good for Wales. One of the many problems we have here in Wales, of course, is our media. Welsh media is mainly controlled by those who push a certain narrative politically, and they like the idea of Welsh independence, or at least keeping it as the status quo as it is. The idea of abolishing any political institution here in Wales would mean many of them would either lose their jobs or they'd have to move to London to work. And so we're up against not just a political establishment here in Wales, we're actually up against the Welsh media as well. That's why I like to broadcast here on my channel, because it gives me the ability to say things that maybe the mainstream media won't allow me to say. The truth is this, ladies and gentlemen, there are quangos paid by the Welsh government, some of which are absolutely ridiculous. They're publicly funded as well. Companies and organisations such as Nation Cymru. Now, I've tried to do some research on Nation Cymru, and I found nothing online. They say they're registered somewhere, but I can't find it anywhere. I know some of the people behind it, and this week I emailed them because they've been posting ads on their website for Welsh independence and parties that, of course, who are sympathetic towards Welsh independence. So I took the time to email one of their team and asked them if Abolish could advertise on there too, and this is what I was told. I'll read it to you now. Thanks for getting in touch. All the ads are currently sold out until next year. Really, that's interesting, isn't it? I'd suspect that if we run one for Abolish, we'd lose more money from cancelled subscriptions than the cost of the banner too. So ultimately what they're saying is, no, you can't advertise with us, yet they're a publicly funded body. That's right, I think it's Welsh Book for Wales and another company that funds them as well. So a publicly funded organisation refusing to put our ads up because they think they would lose money. I mean, there's no impartiality there, is there? Where's the independent journalism on that? And they're not the only one. Yes, Cymru are another one boasting all these great figures, yet the people of Wales don't really want independence. It would be an absolute disaster. And so going back to Welsh independence then, let's look at it for a moment. What has happened here in Wales after 2 decades? We've seen devolution absolutely decimate places around here in the valleys in particular. You know, the deprivation levels and poverty I keep going on about, but because it's true, it's real. I live and work here. My kids go to school here in Abertillery, in the valleys, all 5 of them touring. One's in college, one's left now. But, you know, I've grown my kids up. I've seen what goes on. I've seen what people struggle with. But yet politicians are so distantly removed from this down in the Cardiff Bay bubble or on big fat salaries, not realising that the people of Wales are struggling to make ends meet. And the pandemic's not made it any easier. Let's take a look at our education system for a start. You know, we were ranking one of the lowest, or still are as far as I know, ranking one of the lowest in our education system on the PISA tables, which means in the UK, we're behind in maths, we're behind in reading, and we're behind in science. This is not Westminster's problem. This is a devolved issue. This is the Welsh government. This is what they've put in place. You know, I was arguing with someone this week on Facebook, I think it was, who said to me, devolution has been good for Wales. And I asked him, what's it given us? And he said, free prescriptions and bus passes. So it's taken them 2 decades to work out that what's good for Wales is what they've done is they've given us free prescriptions. But by the way, they're not free because someone has to pay for them. Of course, it comes out of your taxes and mine, so they're not free. Bus passes. So if you can get a bus, that is, try getting a bus from Ebbw Vale to Abergavenny, or get a bus from Bryn Mawr to Ebbw Vale. You know, they're far and few in between. You know, they're cancelled most of the times, or the services are rubbish. And that's not to blame Stagecoach and some of the other companies, because they do a tremendous job with what they've got and everything else. But the reality is public transport in Wales is crap. And now they're talking about electrifying everything, of course, carbon neutral. This planned by 2030, the Welsh Government have said, not 2050, as Westminster have. They want to electrify everything, get rid of your petrol and diesel cars. Good luck with that, living in the Welsh valleys. You try riding to work in the pouring down rain, up a valley, up a mountain in the middle of December. It's not going to work. But the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, devolution has been failing us miserably. Our services, our public transport, our education system is in a mess, as I've already pointed out. And of course, the most important thing to us here in Wales is the NHS. The home of the NHS, and Hiram Bevan, of course, the founder and father of the NHS, would be turning in his grave if he saw the state of the NHS. For example, under Vaughan Gethin's administration and his premiership, we have seen 5 of the 7 health boards in special measures. What does that mean? It means hospitals that can't run themselves. They don't have the right people in place, and it's costing us millions, billions actually, of pounds every single year because Vaughan Gethin doesn't know what he's doing. Talking about not knowing what he's doing, Deputy Minister for the Economy, Lee Waters, on record has said, and you know he's famous for this and he won't like me repeating it because he's probably fed up of hearing it. I quote, "We don't know what we're doing on the economy, we're making it up as we go along." And guess what? Nothing in Wales has changed. They're still really don't know what they're doing and they're making it up as they go along. Complaining about Westminster all the time, not enough money, and of course they've had an extra 2 billion pound for coronavirus and they've kept £1 billion back. Don't know why, maybe for expenses. But that's what's happening here in Wales right now. And people try to convince me that devolution is working. It's not. It's clearly not working. Our education is failing. Homelessness, drug addictions is on the rise. You look at all of these issues and that have caused so much deprivation and poverty for the people of Wales. Devolution is, in the words of Boris Johnson, a complete disaster. It is one of Tony Blair's biggest mistakes, although the war in Iraq was a big mistake as well because he shouldn't have gone there because no weapons were found and he should be in prison as a war criminal. That's by the way. But of course, we've had this one-party state here in Wales thinking that Welsh Labour somehow is the cause of all these problems. Well, it's not. The cause of these problems is the settlement of devolution. We know 22 devolved areas and they're wanting more powers, more members down in the Welsh Senedd or Assembly, because we never voted for a parliament, but they renamed it. In 1997, we were asked, do we want a Welsh Assembly? And they won by a small margin, about 0.6% or something like that, on a very low turnout. More people turn out to vote for their MPs than they do for their AMs or MSs as they're known now. So the truth is this, ladies and gentlemen, that devolution has failed the people of Wales. Now, for those of you who live outside of Wales, outside of the bubble that we're in here, you may not understand what goes on here politically, but we do. We witness it firsthand, the way that the Welsh Government deals with things. It's becoming more and more clear to a lot of people in Wales that devolution is failing, so they're fed up. In fact, a recent poll that was conducted by YouGov and many others that Roger Scully, professor from Cardiff University, normally puts out, I think it was this month, I can't remember, I got that excited about it, but basically had abolished the Welsh Assembly Party on 7%. and predicted to take 4 seats on the regional list in next May's elections. Now that is the highest that the party Abolish have ever ranked. So it tells you something about the appetite that's growing. Welsh nationalists are all over social media calling you a beep, 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 beep. I can't say their words because they're quite horrid, to be honest with you. You have to just keep blocking them. They go mental and have a meltdown. They have no decent arguments. You speak to them about things like, okay, if we had independence, let's talk about the deficit. £14 billion, how are you going to do it? You're going to have to raise taxes, of course. And they say, well, no, there's other ways of doing it. You know, we can charge England for our water, and there's things we can do like that. We can turn water into oil by the sounds of it, but it's not going to happen. It's not a reality. That deficit is huge, and the people of Wales will be a huge burden to them. We cannot carry that burden. Fiscally, it's suicide. And of course, things like, not just that, what about our borders? Are we going to have borders? Which we've seen the Welsh Labour government in recent weeks almost create a border over the COVID pandemic. And of course, you know, there was lots of hilarious things in social media about, you know, Drakeford there with his guns at the border and stuff like that. I mean, the reality is it's a pipe dream that realistically would damage the future of Wales. I've always said that if Wales would prosper and sustain itself and survive as an independent nation, I would be the biggest advocate for it, because I'm proud to be Welsh. I love my culture, my language, and the people of Wales, the land of heroes and poets and everything else that is so great about Wales, like Welsh cakes and rabbit. But that aside, look, the truth is, devolution is not working for the people of Wales. It's working for a set of politicians, a second tier of politicians down in Cardiff Bay, who, you know, don't really understand what it is to struggle every day. The people that I meet and talk to, the communities that I'm involved in, the social stuff that I'm involved in, all of those things. The politicians are clearly out of touch with everyday living, and things have to change. It appears that devolution is just the direction of travel is towards Welsh independence. More powers, more politicians. In fact, out of the 22 devolved areas, they want more. They want things such as the criminal justice system devolved to them. So they're after more powers, and this is heading one way for Welsh independence. And the true challenge facing us in Wales right now, coming in the next 5 to 10 years, is not going to be Welsh Labour. It's not going to be Welsh Conservatives or Plaid Cymru. It's going to be the breakup of the Union. It's going to be a party that stands up for the United Kingdom and Wales as a whole represented in that union. Because let's be quite honest about it. Welsh nationalists, separatists I like to call them, they hate England. They call you in England oppressors. They call you all kinds of violent, vitriol things because they don't like the idea that we're part of one United Kingdom. Of course, they want to be independent, and they'll quote things like Slovenia with a population of 2.1 million people, but yet their cost of living is a lot different to what we are here. Geographically, it's very different. They're a very prosperous nation, unlike us. What are we going to sell them apart from water? We got tourism. So we keep the English out. And what happens to the tourism? Goes down the Swanee. Now Drakeford's on about putting a tourism tax in place. Well, that's really going to help the tourist industry, isn't it? Not. So as you can see, I can catalogue a whole range of reasons why devolution isn't working. You've only got to do a little bit of research online and you can see it clearly yourself. I suppose Scotland have got the same problem with the SNP. A lot of people see them as this great force for good, but the truth is they were going to have a referendum once in a lifetime, but of course they want another one. You know, I'm not against them having a referendum, or us here in Wales. In fact, I'd advocate for a referendum with the caveat that if we have a referendum on Welsh independence, we also, on the ballot paper, we ask people would they also like to abolish the Welsh Assembly and get rid of devolution altogether. So keep it the same, abolish it, or go for Welsh independence. Man, I would support that referendum. Of course I would. And one day maybe Westminster will give us that and we can have a referendum here in Wales. So we let the people of Wales decide, because I know where my chips would be. Chalking the chips, I'll get to Vaughan Gethin in a minute. I know where my chips would be. They would be on the fact that we, as a party, Abolish the Welsh Assembly party that is, will take seats in the Senate. It's a long-term game that we're in. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so we are now seeing more and more people join the cause, become members of this party. And this broadcast isn't about abolish, but this segment, this week's broadcast tonight, Wednesday night, is because of what's happening right now in Welsh media. We have got to make sure that we secure Wales's future, Wales's best future, which is not outside of the United Kingdom, as some would have us believe. not breaking up of the union that we treasure. And let's be honest, I mean, a lot of these Welsh nationalists don't even speak Welsh. They didn't siarad Cymraeg, you know, they don't. I mean, I'm not fluent in it, I only speak a little bit, but the truth is they don't. But they have this pipe dream, this fantasy, this utopia that we're going to survive and live as an independent nation. We simply can't afford to do it. We don't have the money. We don't have the industry anymore. It's something that's not realistic. I'm not sure what goes through Adam Price's head or many of the others of the Welsh National Party, and there's a few others as well, these splinter groups. But let's hope that people wake up, and they are waking up here in Wales, to the fact, as Boris pointed out yesterday in the news when he said, you know, devolution is a disaster. Is a disaster. Yes, it is indeed. And it was Tony Blair's biggest mistake. And I believe it is. So what is the main aim of the Welsh nationalists and those who want independence here in Wales? Well, it's quite clear, not just from what happened during the referendum campaign when all of them, part of the independence group, really wanted to remain in the EU and were very, very, very strong about that. They wanted to, you know, stay in the EU, go big, the biggest democratic vote in history. And I will remind people outside of Wales that you don't know, Wales voted to leave the European Union. Not like Ian Blackford would boast about the SNP. Scotland didn't vote to leave the European Union. We did in Wales. We voted by a majority to leave the European Union. So where does that leave us? We go down this journey of Welsh independence. Then we have to work out our borders, our currency, the deficit, and our defence, of course, because we'll have to have our own army, I suppose. I don't know how that's going to work, to be quite honest. But anyway, so how does it actually work then? What is the end game? Well, I'll tell you what it is, and this is why we need to fight against what is happening right now. They want to rejoin the EU. You talk about currency, they'll talk about having their own currency. What they'll have, Wenglish, I don't really know, but they want to rejoin the EU. There is a plan at play. It's the same as the SNP in Scotland. If they gain independence, what are they going to do? They're going to rejoin the EU. Now, for those who want Welsh independence and want the same, there's questions to be asked. Firstly, the EU are not going to accept you just like that. There are certain criteria you have to meet, for example. There has to be a certain, your fiscal position, your financial position, your currency. So people in Wales, and let's just go down this road and play it out then. So we rejoin the EU and we take on the euro. Try spending that over the border in Chepstow. Good luck. It's not going to work. As I've said before, and I'll keep saying, on this Wednesday night off the cuff here in Rich Politics, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's a pipe dream. It's a fantasy that these people have that isn't a reality. And it doesn't take a genius to work out actually the type of people that we're dealing with. Across social media, you can see it for yourself. They're just nasty people, just in general. You know, I've been called a traitor, a cunt, I should die. I can't even, I wouldn't, you know, grace the broadcast with some of the things that they say, because quite frankly, it is absolutely disgraceful. And these people, you know, and these are supporters of Welsh independence. And I love the fact, though, that they're so easily triggered. You know, you put something on about why independence won't work for Wales, and they go absolutely ape, and they get all their buddies to jump on from Yes Cymru. And you know the ones, because they're normally wearing a scarf saying Yes Cymru on it, sat on their mother's lap. But that's another story for another day. That's it for this week. That's my rant over with. Of course, you know, it's a short one, but I don't like doing long ones, as you know, to update you on all things Welsh politics here in Wales. But, as I've said, devolution is a disaster for Wales. Look at our education, look at our hospitals, our NHS, look at our public transport, our services, the whole thing after 20 years. What have we got of Welsh Labour? What have we got of devolution? Free prescriptions and bus passes. Oh, and we sell carrier bags as well for recycling. Great, that's fantastic. So it's taken politicians who have paid ridiculous amounts of money, because to run that place down there in Cardiff Bay cost about £61 million a year. That comes out of the money we already get from Westminster, of course, and all the other quangos that they're paying. Now, that's another story for another day. If you knew the quangos that are funded by this Welsh government, it is corrupt to the core. And I'm going to leave it there, and I'll catch you on the next broadcast on Rich Politics. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for taking the time to tune in, and I'll see you on Friday.